Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a world that, well, it touches all our lives, but often remains a bit of a mystery. We're talking about how organizations keep our digital information safe and sound. Think about your online banking, maybe your health records, even just, casually scrolling through social media. Every single digital interaction relies on these incredibly complex systems working tirelessly behind the scenes.
It really does. The scale is massive.
So how do the pros actually ensure all that personal, often sensitive data is handled with the utmost care? How do they keep it confidential and make sure it's always there when you need it?
And the flip side, what happens when things inevitably go wrong? Because they sometimes do.
Exactly. Our mission today is to kind of pull back the curtain, maybe demystify some of the frameworks, cut through the jargon a bit. We'll share some compelling real-world stories, too. We really want to give you those aha moments.
A clear, comprehensive shortcut.
Yes, a shortcut to becoming truly well-informed about digital security, but without feeling, totally overwhelmed.
Oh, let's do it.
Okay, so to get us started, let's set the stage. What makes protecting our digital world such a critical and frankly constantly evolving challenge? I mean, we're talking about the fundamental need for secure, efficient data handling, whether it's zipping across networks, being changed, accessed, or just stored away.
Well, what's really striking here, I think, is just the sheer relentless speed of IT device advancement. It forces organizations into this continuous state of reevaluation. It's never a set it and forget it kind of situation.
Right, you can't just install something and walk away.
No way. And businesses adopt this tech, not just for efficiency gains, though that's part of it, but crucially, to actively safeguard their most critical assets.
Assets like digital records, obviously, but what else?
Digital records, absolutely, but also physical assets if they're connected to IT systems. Think industrial controls, building access, things like that.
Ah, okay. So it's not just about supporting their core operations, like making widgets faster. It's really about defending against a constant tide of new threats.
Precisely. And this all kind of rests on the foundation of information science. That's the discipline underpinning how we securely and efficiently implement hardware and software for handling all this data.
Got it. The foundational discipline.
Exactly. And that naturally leads us to the strategic blueprints organizations use, the key frameworks and standards that act as their guiding stars, so to speak.
And when we talk blueprints, one name always seems to pop up first: NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology.
Yeah.
They're a huge player in setting standards, both voluntary and mandatory, am I right? How do they help guide organizations through this really complex terrain?
NIST provides several really vital frameworks. They become industry benchmarks, honestly. The NIST Cybersecurity Framework, or CSF, for instance, that's a voluntary framework.
Voluntary, okay.
Voluntary, but designed specifically to help organizations manage their cybersecurity risks. It's structured around three main parts: the framework core, implementation tiers, and framework profiles. But here's the interesting part. Even though it's voluntary, its comprehensive nature has made it, well, the de facto gold standard.
So everyone uses it anyway.
Increasingly, yes. Even organizations not required to use it are adopting it. It sets a kind of universal bar for digital defense now.
Okay, so that framework core sounds like the real meat of it, where the rubber meets the road. What are the core functions an organization needs to focus on there?
Right. The core has 5 functions. And crucially, they're concurrent functions. Not linear steps, but ongoing activities you do all the time.
Concurrent, not sequential.
Got it. First is identify. Basically, knowing what assets you have. Your people, your systems, the data itself that supports information processing. You need that inventory.
Makes sense. Can't protect what you don't know you have.
Exactly. Then comes protect. This is about putting safeguards in place. Things like access controls, encryption for sensitive information, making sure you have regular data backups, and even training your employees on security best practices. That human element is key.
Okay. Identify assets, put protections in place, then detect. That feels like the critical proactive step, right? Spotting trouble early.
It is. And detection is challenging because attackers are constantly evolving their tactics. Detection focuses on the tools and resources you need to find active cybersecurity attacks. That means continuously monitoring things like network access points, user devices, looking for anomalies, for anything suspicious.
Okay, so you detect something fishy. What's next?
That's respond. These are the actions taken when an attack is detected.
Yeah.
Obtaining the incident, communicating what's happening, coordinating the response.
And finally, cleanup.
Essentially, yes. Recover. This is all about restoring your operations and services after an attack, getting back to business as usual, safely.
So, Identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, all happening concurrently. How does this actually play out in the, let's say, messy real world? Do you have an example?
Absolutely. Let's consider Falcon CPAs, a large accounting firm. They implemented some new security software based on NIST principles.
Okay.
Now, this software wasn't just about blocking known viruses. It was designed to detect unusual behavior, and their reports started flagging something odd. An employee was regularly accessing sensitive client records, but on weekends or way after business hours. And they also noticed a really unusual spike in USB drive usage by this person.
Red flags. Not necessarily a hack, but suspicious.
Exactly. It wasn't a direct attack detected, but the detection of these behavioral anomalies. That triggered an investigation. The respond phase kicked in.
Yeah.
And what they found was this individual was stealing employee banking information right from the payroll department outside normal working hours, basically an insider threat.
Wow, so the NIST framework helped them catch someone on the inside, not just an external hacker.
Precisely. It shows how detect isn't just about malware signatures. It's about spotting suspicious patterns, which prompted the respond actions that uncovered the theft.
That's a powerful illustration. And you mentioned implementation tiers for the CSF earlier. What's their role?
Right. The tiers: partial, risk-informed, repeatable, and adaptive. They aren't about ordering those 5 functions we talked about. They're more like benchmarks. They help organizations gauge how mature and integrated their security practices actually are. It lets them assess their current state and figure out where they need to improve based on their own risk appetite and goals.
Got it. So beyond the CSF, NIST also has a privacy framework. That sounds like it has a slightly different focus, maybe more individual-centric.
It does, yeah. It's newer, published in 2020. The NIST privacy framework is specifically designed to help organizations protect individuals' data, especially in how applications process that data. It's industry agnostic, recognizing diverse privacy needs. And structurally, it's similar to the CSF, using profiles and tiers, but it has its own unique functions focused on privacy risk like identify P, govern P, control P, communicate P.
Okay, so CSF for broad cybersecurity risk, privacy framework for individual data processing protection. But where does NIST SP 853 fit in this puzzle? Is it just another flavor or something else entirely?
That's a crucial distinction.
Uh-huh.
While the CSF and privacy framework are more about best practices, guidance, cost effectiveness, NIST SP 853 is much, much stricter, highly prescriptive.
Stricter how?
It's often mandatory for federal information systems in the U.S. It's designed to protect against the most sophisticated, persistent threats, think nation-state actors. Instead of broad guidance, it details nearly 1,200 specific security and privacy controls.
1,200. Wow, that's incredibly detailed. What kind of areas do those controls cover?
It's really comprehensive. It's broken down into 20 control families. They cover everything from how access is managed to employee security awareness and training, continuous system monitoring, audit logs, configuration management, even supply chain risk management. It's a full spectrum of very robust, detailed security measures.
Okay, so NIST provides these powerful frameworks, but sometimes data protection isn't just a best practice, it's a legal must. Which brings us to global privacy laws and payment protections. These aren't optional anymore, are they?
Not at all. They're mandatory requirements in many cases. General privacy laws are fundamental. They exist to protect an individual's private life, fundamentally, and they build crucial trust between consumers and the businesses they interact with. They do this by strictly regulating how private information gets collected, processed, maintained, and eventually disclosed.
And when those regulations are broken or data gets out, we hear about data breaches. What's the real impact there beyond just the headlines?
Oh, the impact is huge. Data breaches, whether they're accidental spills or malicious attacks, can have catastrophic consequences. For the organization, you're looking at massive legal liabilities, huge financial penalties, fines, lawsuits, and often just irreversible damage to their reputation. Trust is shattered.
And for us, the consumers.
It's deeply personal and scary. Sensitive informations, social security numbers, banking details, health info gets exposed. That puts individuals at severe risk of identity theft, financial fraud, monetary loss. It's a fundamental violation.
Speaking of sensitive health info, let's touch on ITS. That's the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act in the U.S., a big one for healthcare.
Right. ITS, enacted way back in '96, set the national standards for healthcare privacy and security in the U.S. It essentially created 2 main rules everyone talks about. The privacy rule, which governs how protected health information, or PHI, must be handled, and the security rule, which dictates the safeguards needed to protect electronic PHI.
And it applies pretty broadly.
Yes, to healthcare providers, health plans, clearinghouses, and their business associates. and it specifies three types of required safeguards: administrative, physical, and technical controls.
Now, the privacy rules set the stage, but tech changed a lot after 1996, especially with electronic health records becoming the norm. That's where the HITECH Act came in, right? Amending HIPAA in 2009.
That's exactly right. The HITECH Act really amplified HIPAA's impact. It pushed for the adoption of electronic medical records, but it also significantly increased the penalties for violations, made them much tougher. And crucially, it required patients be offered electronic copies of their records, and it broadened HIPAA's scope to explicitly include business associates, those third-party vendors who handle PHI on behalf of a healthcare provider. They became directly liable too.
Okay, shifting focus globally now, GDPR. That feels like a massive force shaping privacy discussions everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. The General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, enacted by the EU, is arguably one of the strictest privacy laws on the planet, and its reach extends far beyond Europe's borders. Any organization processing data of EU residents has to comply. It puts a really heavy emphasis on getting explicit consent for data processing, and the penalties for non-compliance are incredibly steep.
How sti-
You're talking tens of millions of euros, or even a percentage of a company's global annual revenue, whichever is higher. That got everyone's attention worldwide.
No kidding. Okay, and for anyone who swipes, taps, or clicks to pay, PCI DSS is critical, the silent guardian of our cashless world.
That's a good way to put it. The Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI DSS, wasn't created by governments, but by the major credit card brands themselves: Visa, MasterCard, Amex, etc. Its whole purpose is to enhance payment security for all cashless transactions. It lays out 6 core goals, like build and maintain a secure network and protect cardholder data.
And those goals are backed by specific requirements.
Yep, 12 detailed requirements. Things like installing and maintaining firewalls, protecting stored cardholder data using strong encryption, encrypting the transmission of that data across public networks, and implementing really strong access controls. It's all about creating a secure environment for processing, storing, and transmitting that sensitive payment data.
Okay, so we've covered these big regulatory and voluntary frameworks: NIST, HIPAA, GDPR, PCI, DSS. Now, what about the CIS critical security controls?
Wow.
These sound more actionable, like a practical checklist.
Yes, the CIS controls are renowned for their practicality. Think of them as a recommended set of specific actions and best practices designed to effectively strengthen cybersecurity. They're meticulously aligned with other major standards like NIST, CSF, and HIPAA, so they complement rather than conflict. What's really fascinating about them is their guiding principle: offense informs defense.
Offense informs defense. What does that mean?
It means the controls are directly based on analyzing actual attacker behavior and the most common real-world attack vectors. They focus on what attackers actually do. Plus, they're designed to be measurable, they focus on the most critical security problems first, and they're structured to be feasible for organizations of different sizes and resources.
And they have these implementation groups to help organizations tailor the controls, right? Can you give us some concrete examples of CIS controls in action? What do they look like on the ground?
Sure. Take Controls 01, inventory and control of enterprise assets. Sounds basic, maybe, but it's absolutely foundational. It's about knowing every single IT asset connected to your network. Physical servers, virtual machines, laptops, mobile devices, even those obscure IoT sensors may be hidden away somewhere. You simply can't protect what you don't know exists.
Right. Step one is knowing what you have.
Then you have something like Control 03, data protection. This builds on knowing your assets and focuses on securely managing sensitive data throughout its entire life cycle, from the moment it's identified and classified, through its use, storage, sharing, archival, all the way to its secure disposal, and ensuring it's encrypted, both when it's sitting still at rest and when it's moving in transit.
And Control 05, account management. That feels like another fundamental gatekeeper role.
It absolutely is. This control deals with securely managing all types of accounts. Standard user accounts, powerful privileged accounts, automated service accounts. It emphasizes using unique, complex passwords for every account, centralizing account management where possible, regular reviews, and perhaps most importantly today, implementing single sign-on, SSO, ideally combined with multi-factor authentication, MFA.
MFA again. Seems non-negotiable.
Pretty much, yeah. It's a huge security uplift.
Okay, so we've explored the blueprints, the frameworks, the legal guardrails. But frameworks and laws are just paper, right? Without the actual physical and digital structures holding everything together, they don't mean much. So now, let's dive into the digital backbone, the IT infrastructure itself. How do these systems actually operate and defend your data?
Right. At its very core, IT infrastructure is made up of essential hardware components. This ranges from the devices you interact with daily, your laptop, your tablet, your smartphone, those end-user devices, all the way down to the internal computer hardware that powers them, microprocessors, RAM, hard drives. And then there's the crucial network infrastructure that connects everything.
Like modems, routers?
Modems, routers, switches, gateways, and those really important firewalls that act as the digital bouncers, controlling traffic in and out.
And I understand networks can be physically laid out in different ways. Topologies, they're called. Does that affect security?
It absolutely does. These network topologies describe the physical connection layout and how data flows. Think of a simple star network. All devices connect to one central hub or switch.
So if that hub goes down,
Everything connected to it goes down. It's a single point of failure, which isn't great for resilience or security. Compare that to a mesh network. In a mesh, devices have multiple redundant connections between them. If one path fails, data can often find another route. It makes them far more resilient and much harder for an attacker to completely disrupt.
okay, that makes sense. And the conceptual model that helps people understand how all this complex communication works is the OSI model. 7 layers. Sounds technical.
It sounds technical, but the concept is pretty straightforward. The Open Systems Interconnection, or OSI, model is just a conceptual framework. It breaks down the complex process of network communication into 7 distinct manageable layers. It goes from the application layer at the top, which is what your software interacts with, all the way down to the physical layer, which deals with the actual raw transmission of data bits over cables or airwaves. It helps engineers and security pros understand where problems might be occurring and how to secure each part of that communication stack.
So with all this infrastructure, where does our data actually live these days? The rise of cloud computing has really shaken things up for organizations, hasn't it?
Oh, completely revolutionized things. Cloud computing basically allows organizations to stop owning and maintaining all their own physical servers and hardware in-house. Instead, they can effectively outsource their IT infrastructure and services to third-party providers, renting computing resources, servers, storage, software over the internet as needed.
And there are different flavors of cloud services. We hear terms like IaaS, PaaS, SaaS thrown around. Can you quickly demystify those?
Sure. Think of it like building with Lego blocks. IS, or Infrastructure as a Service, is like renting the basic Lego base plate and maybe some standard blocks. The provider gives you the virtual servers, storage, networking, the raw infrastructure, and you manage the operating systems, applications, everything on top.
Okay, you build more yourself.
Right. PaaS, or Platform as a Service, is like renting a pre-built Lego structure, maybe house foundation and walls. The provider gives you the tools and environment to build and deliver applications. Think of a platform for building an online store or a database service. You don't manage the underlying infrastructure, just your app and data.
And SaaS.
SaaS, Software as a Service, is like getting a fully built Lego model delivered to you. These are ready-to-use applications delivered over the internet. Think of your web-based email like Gmail or Salesforce CRM or Microsoft 365. You just log in and use the software. The provider handles everything underneath. That's the most common one end users interact with directly.
So what are the big draws for organizations moving to the cloud? What are the main benefits?
The benefits are pretty substantial. Increased efficiency and scalability, you can ramp resources up or down easily. Significantly reduced costs for IT hardware purchase and maintenance. And often, much better distributed redundancy. Major cloud providers store data in multiple geographic locations, which makes catastrophic data loss from a single incident, like a fire in one data center, far less likely.
But it's not all sunshine and rainbows, right? There must be risks, like giving up some control.
There are trade-offs, absolutely. While the major providers invest heavily in security, organizations do experience a loss of direct, hands-on control over their underlying infrastructure. And there can sometimes be reduced visibility into certain aspects of their IT operations compared to running everything in-house. It becomes a shared responsibility model for security. The provider secures the cloud of the cloud, the customer secures what's in the cloud.
Okay, shared responsibility. Now, within organizations, especially larger ones, they use these big integrated systems. What are ERP and AIS systems, and how do they fit in?
Right, enterprise information systems.
Yeah.
ERP, or enterprise resource planning systems, are often these huge cross-functional systems. They aim to integrate information and processes across an entire organization's departments. Think accounting, human resources, manufacturing, supply chain management, all ideally flowing into a single centralized database and user interface to try to break down silos.
And AIS, Accounting information system.
AIS is more specific. It focuses purely on collecting, recording, storing, processing, and reporting accounting-related information. It's often a critical component within a larger ERP system, like the finance module. Its core job is ensuring financial transactions are recorded correctly, classified properly, valued accurately, posted in the right period, and summarized correctly.
Got it. So, given all this data flowing through infrastructure, clouds, ERPs, how do organizations actually protect sensitive data from prying eyes or accidental leaks? Let's dive into specific data protection mechanisms, maybe starting with the data lifecycle.
Sure, data isn't static. It has a life. It goes through several stages within an organization. Definition, what data is needed, capture creation, preparation, cleaning it up, synthesis, combining it, analytics and usage, publication, sharing reports, archival, long-term storage, and finally, purging, secure deletion. And each of these stages presents unique security considerations and potential vulnerabilities that need specific controls.
Okay, so protecting it throughout its life. And when it comes to keeping sensitive bits safe, organizations use data obfuscation techniques, ways to disguise or hide the real data. What are the main ones?
The big three are usually encryption, tokenization, and hashing. Encryption is probably the most well-known. It basically scrambles readable data, called plain text, into an unreadable format called ciphertext, using an algorithm and a key. Without the correct key, the ciphertext is just gibberish. This can be symmetric encryption, using a single shared secret key for both locking and unlocking, or asymmetric, which uses a pair of keys, a public key for locking and a private key for unlocking.
Okay, encryption scrambles it. What about tokenization and hashing? How are they different?
Tokenization is quite clever. It doesn't actually scramble the original sensitive data. Instead, it replaces the sensitive data, like a full credit card number, with a non-sensitive placeholder, a token. This token is usually a randomly generated value that has no intrinsic meaning. The original sensitive data is stored separately and securely in a central vault. The token is what gets used in day-to-day systems and transactions, significantly reducing the risk if those systems are compromised because the real data isn't there.
So the token stands in for the real thing. And hashing. You said that's different again.
Hashing is crucially different because it's a one-way transformation. It takes an input, say, a file or a password, and runs it through an algorithm to produce a fixed-length string of characters called a hash or a message digest, ROK. Think of it like a unique digital fingerprint for that data. The key things about hashing are you can't reverse it to get the original data back, unlike encryption, and even a tiny change to the input data will result in a completely different hash value.
So it's not for secrecy, but for...
For integrity.
Yeah.
It's perfect for verifying the data hasn't been tampered with. If you calculate the hash of a file when you receive it, and it matches the original hash provided by the sender, the file is intact and unchanged. It's also used heavily for storing passwords securely. You store the hash of the password, not the password itself.
That one-way aspect is critical for integrity checks. Okay, and then there are data loss prevention systems, DLP. What's their specific job?
DLP systems are like digital security guards posted at the exits. Their primary purpose is to prevent sensitive information from being transferred outside the organization's control without authorization. They typically work by scanning data streams and content, looking for predefined patterns like social security numbers, credit card numbers, keywords like confidential, or specific data classifications.
And they scan data moving where?
Two main types. Network-based DLP scans data leaving the network perimeter, think outgoing emails, web uploads, file transfers. Endpoint-based DLP runs directly on user devices like laptops and scans data being copied to USB drives, burned to CDs, printed, or even copied and pasted.
Can you give us a quick example of DLP stopping a potential breach?
Sure. Imagine Alice. She works at North Point Hospital handling provider credentialing. She regularly emails medical records to insurance companies, and these records contain sensitive patient data, social security numbers, dates of birth, etc. Now, a well-configured DLP system would be monitoring her outgoing emails. If Alice, maybe accidentally, maybe intentionally, trying to send an email containing these patient records with SSNs and DOBs to an unauthorized external address, maybe her personal Gmail account, or just the wrong recipient, the DLP system would kick in. It would detect the sensitive data pattern going to an unapproved destination. It could then automatically block the email from being sent, maybe quarantine it, and definitely trigger an alert for the IT security team to investigate. It stops the potential data breach before the sensitive information ever leaves the hospital's control.
That's a really clear example of prevention in action. Okay, powerful tools. Now let's shift perspective to the other side of the coin. Actually, confronting threats and building resilience. We need to understand the constantly shifting threat landscape. Who exactly are these threat agents we keep hearing about?
Threat agents are simply the individuals or groups who pose a threat. The landscape is pretty diverse, unfortunately. You have individual cyber criminals, often motivated by financial gain, stealing credit cards, ransomware, etc. You have hacktivists, who use hacking techniques for political or social causes. You have highly sophisticated nation-states engaging in espionage or disruption, terrorist groups. And importantly, you also have internal threats, insiders. These could be malicious employees seeking revenge or gain, or just negligent employees making mistakes.
So a wide range of actors with different motives and capabilities, and they use a whole dictionary of attack methods. Can you give us a quick rundown of some of the big categories of common cyber attacks we should be aware of? Let's start with network-based ones.
Sure, network-based attacks target the communication infrastructure itself. We often see denial of service, DOLS attacks, or their bigger cousin, distributed denial of service, DDoS. These basically flood a target system or network with overwhelming amounts of traffic, making it unavailable to legitimate users, like causing a massive digital traffic jam. Then there are man-in-the-middle, MITM attacks, where an attacker secretly intercepts communications between two parties, potentially listening in or even altering the data being exchanged without either party realizing it. And spoofing, which is essentially impersonation, faking an IP address, a DNS server response, or an email sender's address to trick systems or people.
Okay, that's targeting the network pipes. What about attacks that go after the software itself, application-based attacks?
Those target vulnerabilities in the code of applications. SQL injection is a classic. Attackers insert malicious SQL code into input fields, like a search box on a website, to manipulate the back-end database, potentially stealing or deleting data. Cross-site scripting, or XSS, involves injecting malicious scripts into legitimate websites. When other users visit the site, their browser executes the script, which could steal their session cookies or redirect them to malicious sites.
You also mentioned a couple of others, race conditions and living off the land. Those sound a bit more subtle.
They are. A race condition exploits timing issues. Imagine two operations trying to access or modify the same resource at almost the exact same time. If the security check happens slightly before the malicious action completes due to timing quirks, the attacker might bypass the check. It's exploiting a very small window of opportunity. And living off the land, or lateral, attacks are particularly sneaky. Here, attackers don't bring their own custom malware or hacking tools. Instead, they use the legitimate tools and features already present on the victim's system or network, things like PowerShell, WMI, or standard admin tools.
Why do that?
To blend in. By using existing tools, their activity looks much more like normal administrative work, making it way harder for security systems to detect them. It's like a spy using the target's own resources against them.
Clever and worrying. Okay, what about host-based attacks? Targeting individual computers or servers.
Right. This category is broad, but includes malware, that umbrella term for all sorts of malicious software. Viruses that infect files and spread, worms that self-replicate across networks, Trojan horses that disguise themselves as legitimate software but contain hidden malicious payloads. Also, brute force attacks, where attackers systematically try guessing passwords or encryption keys, often using automated tools. And keystroke logging, using software or hardware to secretly record every key pressed on a keyboard, capturing passwords, messages, everything.
Now, social engineering feels like a completely different category. It's not about code, it's about tricking people, right? Exploiting human psychology.
Exactly. And often, it's incredibly effective because humans can be easier to manipulate than secure systems. Phishing is the most common, using deceptive emails, texts, or messages designed to look legitimate, trying to trick you into revealing sensitive information, like login credentials, or clicking on malicious links that install malware. Phishing is just phishing over the phone, voice phishing. Baiting involves luring victims with a tempting offer, like a free music download or a misplaced USB drive labeled salaries that actually contains malware. And piggybacking, or tailgating, is simpler, still gaining unauthorized physical access to a secure area by simply following an authorized person through a door before it closes. It preys on politeness or inattention.
People are often the weakest link, as they say, and two threats that seem to be constantly in the news now are ransomware and supply chain attacks. What makes them so prominent?
Ransomware has become a massive problem. It's malware that encrypts a victim's files or entire systems, making them completely inaccessible. The attackers then demand a ransom payment, usually in cryptocurrency, in exchange for the decryption key. And increasingly, they also threaten to publicly leak the stolen sensitive data if the ransom isn't paid. Double extortion. The impact can be devastating. shutting down hospitals, cities, businesses for days or weeks.
And supply chain attacks?
These are insidious. Instead of attacking an organization directly, the attackers compromise a trusted third-party vendor or software supplier that the target organization uses. They inject malicious code into software updates or exploit vulnerabilities in the vendor systems to gain access to the vendor's customers, the primary targets. It leverages the trust relationship between the vendor and customer, making it very hard to detect initially. The SolarWinds attack was a major example of this.
Wow. It sounds like a complex web of threats. But you mentioned attacks often follow a kind of pattern and attack lifecycle.
They generally do, yes. While the specific tools and techniques vary wildly, attackers often follow a logical progression. It usually starts with reconnaissance, gathering information about the target. Then initial access, finding a way in, maybe through phishing or exploiting a vulnerability. After that comes execution, running their malicious code. Persistence, ensuring they maintain access, even if the system reboots. Privilege escalation, trying to get higher level permissions. Defense evasion, actively trying to avoid being detected by security tools. Then, achieving their goal, the impact stealing data, deploying ransomware, etc. And finally, covering tracks, trying to erase evidence of their presence.
Understanding that lifecycle must help defenders anticipate and interrupt the attack.
Definitely. Knowing the typical stages helps organizations place defenses and detection mechanisms at each potential step.
Okay, so to counter all these threats, organizations rely heavily on strong security policies and practices. What's an acceptable use policy, or AUP, and why is that important?
An AUP is a really fundamental internal document. It clearly defines the rules and expectations for how employees are permitted to use the organization's technology resources, things like company-issued computers, the corporate network, internet access, email systems. It outlines what is considered acceptable behavior and what's prohibited, and usually states the consequences for violating those rules. It's crucial for setting expectations and protecting the organization from misuse, whether intentional or accidental, by its own people.
And what about mobile devices? So many people use their personal phones or tablets for work now. How do organizations handle mobile device security policies and this whole BYOD, bring your own device trend? Seems like a huge convenience, but also a security nightmare.
It's definitely a major challenge. It's a constant balancing act. Organizations need robust policies to manage the inherent security risks that come with employees using personal mobile devices to access corporate data or networks. These policies typically cover requirements like mandatory screen locks and passcodes, device encryption, the ability to remotely wipe corporate data if the device is lost or stolen, rules about which apps can be installed, and how corporate data must be segregated from personal data on the device, all while trying to respect employee privacy as much as possible. It's tricky.
Definitely a balancing act. Okay, let's shift to controlling who gets access to what. We're talking authorization and authentication, the digital gatekeepers. Zero trust is a term we hear constantly now. It sounds almost paranoid, but it's becoming the standard.
It sounds paranoid, but it's really a pragmatic response to the modern threat landscape. What's truly transformative about the zero trust security model is how it flips the old approach on its head. The traditional model was often trust but verify. Once you were inside the network perimeter, you were generally trusted. Zero trust assumes the network is always potentially compromised. It operates on the principle of never trust, always verify. Every single access request, regardless of whether it originates from inside or outside the network perimeter, must be explicitly verified before being granted. Location doesn't imply trust anymore.
So it's not just about getting through the front door once. It's about constantly proving who you are and that you should have access every step of the way.
Exactly. Continuous verification of identity, device health, context. And that ties directly into other core principles like least privilege and need to know.
Right, those sound fundamental. What are they?
They're absolutely core security principles. Least privilege means that any user, program, or system should only be granted the absolute minimum level of permissions, access rights, and privileges necessary to perform its specific, authorized task or job function. Nothing more. Need to know is similar, but focuses specifically on data access. Users should only have access to the specific data and information they absolutely require to do their jobs. Both principles dramatically limit the potential damage if an account or system is compromised because the compromised entity simply doesn't have access to everything.
Reduces the blast radius, essentially. Now, can you clarify the difference between identification and authentication? People often seem to use those terms interchangeably.
That's a common point of confusion, but they are distinct steps. Identification is the act of claiming an identity, saying who you are. Providing a username, swiping an ID card, giving your email address, even a biometric scan is initially just identification. You're presenting credentials. Authentication is the process of verifying that claim, proving that you are actually the person associated with the identity you just claimed. This is where passwords, MFA codes, or matching the live biometric scan against a stored template come in. Identification says, I am Bob. Authentication proves it.
Okay, claim versus proof. That makes sense. And for the proof part, authentication, you've mentioned MFA multi-factor authentication multiple times as being key. Why is it considered the gold standard now?
It's considered the gold standard because relying on just one factor, typically just a password, something you know, is notoriously weak. Passwords get stolen, guessed, reused, phished. MFA dramatically increases security by requiring two or more different types of verification factors before granting access. These factors fall into three main categories. Something you know, like a password or PIN, something you have, like a physical token or a code generated on your smartphone app, and something you are, a biometric factor, like a fingerprint, facial scan, or iris scan. By requiring multiple factors, even if one factor, like your password, is compromised, the attacker still can't get in without the other factor. It significantly mitigates the risk from compromised credentials and brute force attacks.
And it works with single sign-on, SSO.
Absolutely. SSO provides the convenience of logging in once to access multiple applications. MFA should ideally be layered on top of SSO to ensure that single login is strongly protected. Convenience plus security.
Got it. So even with all these strong policies and authentication methods, organizations can't just set them and forget them. They need to continuously test and monitor for weaknesses, right? How do vulnerability scanners help with that?
Vulnerability scanners are essential tools for proactive defense. They're typically automated software that systematically scans an organization's networks, servers, workstations, and applications, looking for known security weaknesses. They check things like open ports, service configurations, software versions, patch levels, and compare what they find against huge databases of known vulnerabilities, like the Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures (CVE) list. They essentially generate a report highlighting potential security holes that need fixing.
So they find the known problems. What about finding unknown problems or testing how well the defenses actually work against a real attack? That sounds like penetration testing or pen tests, ethical hacking.
That's precisely what pen testing is. It's authorized, ethical hacking. Organizations hire trained security professionals, ethical hackers, or pen testers, to actively simulate real-world cyber attacks against their systems, networks, and applications. The goal is to find vulnerabilities and exploit them, just like a malicious attacker would, but in a controlled way, before the bad guys do. Take that first payment example again. They wanted to test their new biometric payment tech.
Right.
They hired a firm to do red team exercises. That team didn't just run a scanner. They performed deep discovery, actively scanned for vulnerabilities, then tried to exploit those weaknesses to gain access, escalate privileges, maybe access sensitive data. Then they documented everything, how they got in, what they accessed, and crucially, how first payment could fix those issues. It's a much more active adversarial test of defenses.
A real stress test. And after finding vulnerabilities, whether through scanning or pen testing, the next step is fixing them. That's patch management, right? Sounds like essential, if maybe unglamorous, maintenance.
Unglamorous, maybe, but absolutely vital. Patch management is the ongoing, systematic process of identifying, acquiring, testing, and deploying software updates, patches, to fix bugs, address security vulnerabilities, and improve performance in operating systems and applications. It's not just about clicking update. There's a rigorous process involved. Assessing which patches are relevant and critical, testing the patches thoroughly in a non-production environment first, to make sure they don't break other things, getting approval, scheduling and deploying the patches to live systems, and then verifying that the patches were installed successfully and actually fixed the vulnerability. It's a continuous critical cycle for maintaining security hygiene.
Okay, so patching holes, strong authentication, policies. It all contributes to this idea of layered security or defense in depth, doesn't it?
Exactly. Defense in depth is a fundamental security strategy. The core concept is simple. Don't rely on any single security control or layer. Instead, use a diversified set of security tactics working together. This includes physical controls like locked server rooms, logical or technical controls like firewalls, MFA, encryption, and administrative controls like policies, training, background checks. The idea is that if one layer fails or is bypassed by an attacker, other layers are still in place to detect or stop the attack. It's about building multiple, overlapping, and different types of security measures to eliminate single points of failure. It involves both redundancy, duplicating critical controls, and diversification, using different kinds of controls. Makes it much harder for an attacker to succeed.
Multiple hurdles for the attacker to jump over. Okay, we've talked a lot about putting defenses in place, but what happens when, despite best efforts, the worst case scenario actually happens? An attack gets through or a disaster strikes. How do organizations prepare for that? We're talking incident response and business resiliency.
Right. Preparation is key here. Every organization, seriously, regardless of its size, absolutely needs a formal, documented incident response plan, or IRP. This isn't just a nice-to-have binder sitting on a shelf. It needs to be a well-rehearsed, practical roadmap. It details the procedures to follow, defines roles and responsibilities for the response team, and outlines the communication strategies and technical steps needed to effectively detect, respond to, and limit the consequences of a cyber attack or security breach. It's the playbook for when things go sideways.
What does a typical IRP timeline or the key phases look like? What happens when that plan gets activated?
It usually starts long before any incident, with the preparation phase, getting the team trained, having the right tools ready, establishing communication channels, practicing drills. Then when something happens, you move into detection and identification, figuring out that an incident has occurred and what kind it is. Once identified, the immediate goal is containment, stopping the attack from spreading further, maybe by isolating affected systems or network segments. Then comes eradication, actually removing the threat, the malware, the attacker's foothold, from the environment. After the threat is gone, recovery focuses on restoring affected systems and data, getting back to normal operations safely. Reporting is also crucial throughout communicating the incident appropriately to management, legal teams, maybe regulators or customers, depending on the severity.
And after it's all over.
That's arguably one of the most important phases. Post-incident activity or lessons learned, reviewing exactly what happened, how the plan worked or didn't, documenting everything, and using that analysis to improve the IRP, the defenses, the training for the future. It's a continuous improvement cycle.
So it's not just about cleaning up the mess, but learning from it to be better prepared next time. Now, what's the difference between disaster recovery, DR, and business continuity, BC? They sound related, maybe even overlapping.
They are related but have distinct scopes. That distinction is important. Disaster recovery, DR, is primarily focused on restoring the organization's IT infrastructure and operations after a major disruptive event, fire, flood, earthquake, or a massive cyber attack that destroys or disables critical IT systems. DR planning often involves setting up arrangements for alternative processing facilities, like off-site data centers. These can be cold sites, which are basically just empty rooms with power and cooling. You have to bring in all your own equipment, so recovery takes days or weeks. It's the cheapest option. Or warm sites, which have some pre-installed network connections and maybe some hardware, shortening recovery time to maybe hours or a few days. Or hot sites, which are fully equipped, mirrored data centers ready to take over operations almost immediately with minimal downtime. Hot sites offer the fastest recovery but are, naturally, the most expensive.
Okay, so DR is about getting the IT back online after a catastrophe. What about business continuity, BC? That sounds broader.
It is much broader, yes. Business continuity, BC, planning is more comprehensive. It focuses on ensuring that the entire business can continue performing its essential functions during and after any type of crisis, not just IT-related ones. This could be a pandemic, a supply chain disruption, a natural disaster, a reputational crisis. BC planning considers all critical business processes, including non-IT functions like human resources, customer support, manufacturing, logistics, communications. It's about keeping the core mission of the enterprise running, maintaining operations, and protecting the brand, even when normal operations are significantly disrupted. DR is usually a component of a larger BC plan.
Okay. BC is the bigger picture, and a crucial part of that BC planning is doing a business impact analysis, or BIA. What's its purpose? Why is it so critical?
A BIA is absolutely fundamental to effective BC and DR planning. Its main purpose is to identify the organization's most critical business functions and processes, the ones that absolutely must continue for the organization to survive. Then, for each critical process, the BIA determines two key metrics: the maximum tolerable downtime, MTD, sometimes called recovery time objective, RTO, which is the absolute longest time that process can be unavailable before the organization suffers unacceptable consequences, like bankruptcy, regulatory fines, loss of life. And the recovery point objective, RPO, which defines the maximum amount of data loss the organization can tolerate for that process, measured in time. For example, can we afford to lose the last hour of data or the last 24 hours? The BIA quantifies the potential impact of disruptions, which helps prioritize recovery efforts and justify investments in resilience measures.
Can you give us a quick example of how a BIA might actually calculate potential financial losses from a disaster? You mentioned Buildtech Inc. earlier.
Right. Let's say Buildtech Inc.'s data center is located in an area with some flood risk. To justify investing in better flood defenses or maybe moving the data center, they'd use a BIA to estimate the potential financial impact of a flood. They'd first estimate the annualized rate of occurrence, ARO. How likely is a major flood to happen in any given year? Maybe historical data suggests once every 20 years, so the ARO is 120 or 0.05. Then they estimate the single loss expectancy, SLE. How much money would they lose if that flood happened? This includes damage to equipment, lost revenue during downtime, recovery costs, etc. Let's say the data center is worth $5 million and a flood would cause 40% damage. The exposure factor, EF, is 40%, so the SLE is $5 million, 40%, $2 million. Finally, they calculate the annualized loss expectancy, ALE, by multiplying ARO SLE, so $0.052 million to $100,000 per year. This ALE figure gives them a concrete estimate of the average financial hit they can expect from flooding each year, which makes it much easier to decide if spending, say, $50,000 a year on better flood protection is a worthwhile investment and quantifies the risk.
That makes the decision much more data-driven. Okay, so understanding risks, building robust defenses, preparing for the worst, that's all crucial. But the digital world is constantly changing new tech, new threats. How do organizations stay agile and maintain assurance in such a dynamic environment?
That brings us squarely to the importance of change management. This isn't just about managing organizational change. In IT, it specifically refers to the formal process used to govern and control every modification made to the organization's IT infrastructure, systems, or applications. From applying a simple software patch, to configuring a new server, to rolling out a major new application, every change needs to be managed carefully. Without a structured change management process, chaos can quickly ensue, leading to outages, security holes, or unexpected problems.
And a key principle within good change management is using segregated environments for testing changes before they go live. What are those environments and why are they so important?
Segregated environments are absolutely critical for making changes safely. Changes should never be developed or tested directly on the live production systems that the business relies on. Instead, you use separate, isolated environments. Typically, you have a development environment where programmers write and initially test new code. Then a testing, or QA, quality assurance environment, where dedicated testers rigorously debug the code, check its functionality, and perform security testing. Often there's also a staging environment, which is designed to be an exact replica of the production environment. Final testing and user acceptance testing happen here before the change is released, ensuring it works correctly in a real-world setup. And only after passing through all these stages does the change get deployed to the production environment, the live system used by end users. This strict separation prevents untested changes from breaking live operations and catches errors early.
That makes perfect sense. Test it thoroughly before it impacts real users. We also hear about different software development models, like agile versus waterfall. How do they fit into managing change, especially with the need for speed in modern business?
They represent different philosophies for managing the development and change process. The waterfall model is the traditional approach, very linear and sequential. You define all the requirements up front, then design the whole system, then build it, then test it, then deploy it. Each phase must be completed before the next begins. It's rigid, like building a house from a fixed blueprint. Agile methodologies, on the other hand, are iterative and flexible. Instead of one big long cycle, work is broken down into smaller increments or sprints. Cross-functional teams work collaboratively and simultaneously, developing and testing small pieces of functionality. They get frequent feedback from stakeholders and adapt the plan as they go. It's much more adaptable to changing requirements.
I remember you mentioned the Refraction Realty example earlier and how they used Agile for their client portal. How did that help them?
Right. Refraction Realty chose Agile specifically because they wanted continuous feedback as they built their online client portal. Using Agile meant the development team delivered working pieces of the portal frequently, maybe every couple of weeks. The client could see it, use it, and provide feedback immediately. This allowed the team to make small adjustments and corrections iteratively throughout the entire development process. The big advantage, the insight here, was that it minimized the risk of finding out at the very end of the project that they'd built something the client didn't actually want or need. It avoided big, costly rework late in the game because feedback was constant, much more responsive.
Makes sense, adapt as you go. Now, for formally managing and approving all these changes, especially significant ones, there's the Change Advisory Board, or a CA. Why is having a CAB so critical for maintaining stability and control?
The CAB plays a vital role in mature change management. It's typically a formal committee made up of representatives from different parts of IT and maybe the business. Its primary purpose is to review, assess, approve or reject, schedule, and document all significant changes to the IT environment before they are implemented. It acts as a crucial control point, ensuring that changes are properly planned, tested, resourced, and that their potential impact on other systems or business operations is understood and mitigated. It prevents unauthorized or risky changes from slipping through.
Can you illustrate why skipping the CAB is a bad idea? You mentioned the lasso example.
Yes, the Lasso example is a cautionary tale. Lasso was an insurance company. They hired a new developer who, eager to impress, started working on fixing bugs in the claims processing system. But there was no formal CAB process, or it wasn't followed. Working late one night, the developer needed test data. Instead of using properly anonymized test data, they used a copy of actual client claims data in their test environment. Then, crucially, they accidentally resubmitted those real claims from the test environment directly into the production system. The result: thousands of duplicate claim payments were issued, causing a massive financial headache, requiring a huge internal audit to sort out, and significantly damaging trust with their clients. A functioning CAB would likely have prevented this entirely by enforcing proper procedures for testing, data usage, and requiring formal approval before any code moved to production. Or at the very least, the deviation would have been flagged immediately. It's a critical safety net against unintended consequences.
A very clear and costly lesson. Okay, finally, let's talk about ensuring trust with SOC engagements. What exactly are these SOC reports we sometimes hear about, especially when dealing with outsourced services? Why do they matter?
SOC reports, which stands for System and Organization Controls, are essentially independent assurance reports. They become incredibly important in our increasingly outsourced world. They're designed for organizations, called user entities, that rely on external service organizations for key functions. Think cloud hosting providers like AWS or Azure, SaaS providers, payroll processors, data centers. These reports provide the user entities, the clients, with confidence and assurance that the service organization they're trusting with their data or processes has effective internal controls in place over security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, or privacy. It's about third-party risk management and trust verification.
And there are different types, right? SOC 1 versus SOC 2 seems to be the main distinction.
That's the primary distinction people encounter, yes. A SOC1 report focuses specifically on the service organization's controls that are relevant to its client's internal control over financial reporting, ICFR. So if you outsource your payroll processing, you'd want a SOC1 report from the payroll provider to assure your auditors that their processes won't cause material errors in your financial statements. A SOC report, on the other hand, is much broader and more common for general technology service providers. It focuses on controls related to one or more of the 5 trust services criteria, or principles, as they are now often called. These are defined by the AICPA, American Institute of Certified Public Accountants.
Okay, so SOC 1 for financial reporting relevance, SOC 2 for broader operational controls based on these trust services criteria. Let's quickly list those 5 criteria for SOC 2.
Sure. The 5 trust services criteria are security, the foundational one, protecting systems against unauthorized access, use, or modification. Availability, ensuring systems are operational and accessible as agreed. Processing integrity, ensuring system processing is complete, valid, accurate, timely, and authorized. Confidentiality, protecting information designated as confidential, like business plans or intellectual property. And privacy, protecting personal identifiable information, PII, in line with the organization's privacy notice and relevant regulations like GDPR or CCPA. A SOC2 report details the service organization's controls related to the chosen criteria, the tests the independent auditor performed on those controls, and the results of those tests.
So bringing it back to the listener, why does this matter to the average person using online services every day? How does a SOC report for, say, a cloud provider affect me?
It matters immensely because it's fundamentally about trust and the security of your data, even if indirectly. When you entrust your photos to a cloud storage provider, your financial details to an online payment processor, or your personal information to a SaaS application, you're relying on that provider to protect it. While you, as an end user, might not read the SOC report directly, the businesses using those providers rely heavily on these reports as part of their due diligence. It gives them assurance that the provider has appropriate safeguards. So these reports provide a critical layer of assurance that flows down, ensuring the services you ultimately rely on are being operated securely and responsibly by those third parties. In a world built on outsourced services, they're a vital mechanism for maintaining confidence.
That makes sense. It's about the whole chain of trust. Wow. Okay, so as you can hopefully see now, the world of digital security is this really rich, intricate tapestry. It's woven with these foundational frameworks, meticulous processes, and this constant dynamic dance between innovation and defense.
It really is. And it's not just about the technology itself. It's
Yeah.
equally about the people involved, the policies they follow, and just a perpetual commitment to trying to stay one critical step ahead of the threats.
Absolutely. From those comprehensive blueprints provided by NIST and the practical steps from CIS to understanding the nuts and bolts of IT infrastructure and the critical assurance provided by things like SOC reports. Every single piece plays an indispensable role in safeguarding our increasingly connected digital lives.
Hmm.
What stands out most to you from our deep dive today? Maybe it's the sheer volume and ingenuity of the threats that organizations are constantly facing, or perhaps it's the equally ingenious, layered ways they're building defenses to counter them.
I have a lot to think about.
For sure. The next time you log into an app or make an online purchase or even access your health records online, maybe take just a moment to consider all those invisible guardians working behind the scenes, constantly striving to keep your information secure. In a world where our data is arguably as valuable as any physical asset, maybe even more so, understanding these protections isn't just for the tech experts anymore. It really feels like it's becoming essential knowledge for all of us.
I agree. Being informed is empowering.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We really hope you feel a little more well-informed now and perhaps even a lot more curious about this crucial topic.
Hope it was helpful.
Until next time, stay safe out there in the digital realm.